Okay. So thanks everyone for joining today. This is WoodsValldata's first webinar, so bear with us as we move through it. A special thank you to our panelists today for volunteering their time to share their experiences with us. We've got Helen Dorr, who's Head of Data Strategy and Insights at WoodsValldata. We have Gina Almond, Head of Income Generation at Blind Veterans UK. Joe Stone, Head of Public Fundraising at Battersea. And Ella Pierce, Director of Fundraising and Marketing at Site Savers. So welcome. We also have Helena Baker, who is in the background helping WoodsValldata just make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. So if you see her name on the panelists, that's why she's here. She's taking note of all the chat and the questions and answers as we go through. So we hope that the webinar today will provide some useful insights to take forward into your ongoing fundraising strategies during COVID-19. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. So you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen that there is a chat function. So if you'd like to talk to all of the other attendees on the webinar today, please make use of that chat function. You can chat through, put any comments that you like in there and start a discussion. Please feel free to use it. However, at the end of the webinar, we're holding a question and answer session with all of our panelists. If you'd like to ask a question of any one of the panelists, please make it clear who the question is addressed to and pop it in the Q&A function. So there should be a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen as well. If you could use that, and we'll try and answer as many questions as we can in the time remaining at the end of the webinar, but obviously we won't probably get to answer them all. What we will try and do is answer you all separately. So we'll email you on the email address that you provided to attend the webinar with any of the answers that we don't get around to addressing. We'll also be doing some live polls as part of the session. So after each panelist has spoken, we'll do a poll. That's for you to get involved in. Please do vote as part of that poll so that we can see how you compare to, or you can see how you compare your answers to those of your peers. So hopefully that will provide some additional insights as part of this webinar. We will try and keep to time, so we're going to try and stop at 12 o'clock. Hopefully we will be able to achieve that. So without more ado, I'm going to kick things off, and I'm pleased to introduce you to our first panelist, Helen Dorr. Helen is Head of Data Strategy and Insights at WoodsValldata. She's been working closely with our charities and account directors, and her role is to support their or your fundraising activities about delivering actionable insights and data strategy recommendations alongside wider charity benchmarking and trend analysis. So Helen brings with her experience of working with charity fundraising sector and working on data and CRM planning and insights projects. And Helen compiled the impact of COVID-19 on individual giving report and is here to give us the top line insights. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen. Okay, first things first, can everyone, not that you can answer, but can the panelists see that at least so that I know that's okay?
Yes.
Lovely, thanks, Helen. Okay, so here we go. This is our report. So as coronavirus took hold, moving out the end of Feb and into March, it was quite clear very quickly that charities were going to be severely impacted by it. Key sources of income, events, gatherings, big fundraising events like London Marathon, shops and sites were all removed as fundraising income streams. So immediately we found that our clients were starting to ask questions. They were reviewing their programs, reviewing their campaigns, wondering what to do. Do they cancel? Do they carry on? Do they change it? Do they swap things around? They were asking us questions around what we were seeing. So how were other campaigns performing? Were cancellations on direct debits increasing? Was individual giving, even happening at the moment? Would an emergency appeal be a good idea? Had anyone else started? What was happening with them if they had? So we thought we'd try and help answer those questions for the charities that we work with and wider charity colleagues. So we launched a little project to try and pull together some information that we hoped would be of help for people. So we took some relevant data, anonymised it obviously, and aggregated it where it was relevant. We were very keen to look back to this time last year to try and understand what the differences were. Very keen to, again, within that, look at like for like. So we focus in on campaigns and programs, charities that were running very similar campaigns across the two time frames that we were looking at, where we were comparing like for like. And obviously where it was just emergency appeals, we were only looking at those that were specifically corona related emergency appeals. Looking at the data, this is what we found. So cash campaigns, overall, so looking at all of the cash campaigns this year, along with the emergency appeals, we could see that basically they're still performing very well. Overall, we had a 25% increase in response rates against what we were forecasting. Possible reasons. Oh, there are a mix. It's possible that this is a channel that people can still use while others have been shut down to them, and or they can't get out of their own house very easily. A cash campaign is a good way for them to still be able to give. That doesn't impact on them leaving the house or doing other things too much. The demographic of cash asks tend to be slightly more mature. So they are potentially less financially impacted by corona. There's less fear of furloughing or job losses, of mortgage payments. They tend to be more asset rich and therefore probably a little bit more stable in the current times, and therefore still able to give. Being more mature as well, they probably have more time even than they had before. So they may not be leaving the house as much. They've got more time to sit and read and are very engaged with their charities. So again, this is the channel that they can still use, they can still access and still give by. We looked at within the overall cash, two elements. We looked at the emergency appeals and then the like for like warm cash campaigns. Stripped out cold data, wanted to keep it as like for like as we could. So we just looked at warm data sets of comparable cash campaigns. The thing we found straight away is that overall, it's a really stable picture. Some are up, some are down, always the way. But we saw a 10% last year versus this year. So very, very stable. The average gift was just up by £1. So people, it felt like they were maybe giving a little more in the current climate. But yeah, overall, basically a very stable picture year on year, which was very reassuring, obviously. Within that, we did look at how they were paying. So we could see a slight increase in credit card payments and a slight increase in online payments. The numbers of those are quite small for us. Most of our responses tend to come in postally. As you can see there on the right hand side, but there was a definite uplift. The numbers are valid, and we could see that there was a slight shift to using alternative payment methods. Could just be an ongoing trend, but definitely something that we've seen, so could well be corona related. The emergency cash appeals within our overall cash campaigns, this is giving us the overall uplift that we can see against forecast. And you can see here within the emergency cash appeals, we had a 40% uplift, so a 3.73% percent points uplift against forecast, giving us an overall 40% uplift. The average gift as well, you can see there, went up to 33% on the ones that we've been looking at, which is a 57% uplift on the average gift as well. So they're working really well. It's still early days. The time frame we've been looking at with these is March and April. So obviously they're still going on into May. We've had others launch since then, and our plan is probably to do a review at the end of June. It'll be particularly interesting to see how the emergency cash appeals and the direct debits are working. Okay, moving into regular giving. So here we have seen a little bit more of an impact. There was a definite spike in February, March on last year, particularly March. There was a 24% uplift there on cancellations. So a definite shift. Interestingly though, I mean, the reasons for that could be mixed. So if you look at January in this year compared to the March, it's actually higher. So although there was a spike in March, not actually as bad as January, which is when we traditionally see a spike in cancellations, kind of New Year blues, starting out a new year and money saving. You know, it wasn't as bad as that, which is quite interesting. Also, the acquisition channels for a lot of regular giving, face-to-face venues have obviously been shut down. So with less acquisition, you see less cancellations. So again, that might be sort of slightly why that's starting to slow back down as we move into April. Again, a key area that we're going to keep an eye on moving forward, because it will be interesting to see how that changes as we move into May and June. The reasons this may have more of an impact that we can see, particularly in March, a younger audience, probably more impacted, more scared by the future, maybe being furloughed, fear of redundancy longer term, mortgage payments, rent payments. They have more outgoings, more things to be worried about, and moving out a committed gift is probably something that would feel quite reassuring and safe to do if you're in a time of flux and a time of fear longer term. So again, it will be very interesting to see how that pans out over the next couple of months. One last one, just to kind of support everything else really that we've seen. Support to service call volumes increased. People would like a chat, people are unsure, different types of payments, cancellations, not surprising at all to see that. So what does it all mean? Time to take action. So some of the thoughts we had, charities are more vocal at the moment. There's significant media coverage, domestic violence, homeless charities, as you can see there, you know, they've been shouting loud about the need for more support and the impact of coronavirus on them. Supporters are more aware, they're consuming more media, they're very aware of what's going on around them. Support with that national sense of humanity that they're seeing, they're clapping every week, Captain Tom Moore. You know, there's a lot more, I think, visibility of charities, and people have more time and are consuming more media to maybe absorb what charities are saying. So emergency appeals are working. It's a good idea to consider one potentially if that works for you, but definitely maintain business as usual campaigns. From what we can see, particularly on the cash side, or you know, in particular, everything is still working well. If anything, going up. So yeah, definitely don't cancel things is you know what we'd recommend. Keep going. It might be a way to help support the other income streams that you're missing at the moment. Look for digital and postal channel opportunities. Everyone's digital at the moment. It will continue that way. So yeah, find those opportunities, as I'm sure you already are. And thank your donors. I think there's a lot of personal, it feels quite personal at the moment, and that people are responding to thanking and those personal messages. They appreciate that as always. And keep going, basically, just keep on going. Okay, that is me done. I'm going to stop sharing and hand back over to the rest of the team.
Thanks, Helen. That's really helpful. Just so that everybody who's on the attendee list knows, the report that Helen, that the content of Helen's presentation was based on is available on the WoodsValldata website. So if anybody wants to access that report, please do go over to woodsvalldata.co.uk and you will be able to access the full report with all the information in there. Just noticed a couple of questions coming in saying, can you share the deck? The report probably gives you much more
yeah,
detail and insight on that.
There's quite a lot of information around what I've been talking about within the actual report, so that's probably the one to share. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Helen. Okay, we're going to try a short poll now, if everybody is happy to be involved in that. I'm going to have a few seconds for you to vote on that poll, and then we'll share the results. So the question is, and I'm hoping that everybody can see this, is how has your approach to fundraising changed as a result of lockdown? So have you launched an emergency appeal, for example? Have you increased or introduced different channels throughout this period? Or actually, have you reduced or ceased any channels during this period? Obviously, face-to-face will have retail, etc. will have gone, but it'd be interesting to know what you've done altogether. So I'll just take a few seconds there to allow you to vote. Okay. Just a few more seconds and then we will share the poll. Okay. 3 more seconds, and we'll share it there. Okay, so I can share those results with you so everybody can see. What we've got here is that we've got 60% of the people that voted have launched an emergency appeal. So that's really interesting and good to see, and hopefully they have been as effective as the ones that we've seen coming through at WoodsValldata. 53% of people have increased or introduced social media, and 43% of people have increased or introduced fundraising through other channels. I've just realised there was another question, apologies. So which channel restriction has impacted your income most? Thank you for answering that one as well. So obviously face-to-face has impacted most, events has come in second, and other channels is the third there in terms of quantity. Thank you for participating in that. We will now look to hear from Gina Almond. So, hi, Gina. Gina Almond is Head of Income Generation at Blind Veterans. Her role covers all areas of income generation, including legacies, corporate and commercial partnerships, philanthropy, trusts and foundations, and direct marketing. And prior to working at Blind Veterans UK, she held a variety of senior global commercial positions, specialising in product development and marketing strategy. So hi, Gina, and thank you.
Hi everybody. So for this session, and obviously for the sake of time, we're going to just focus on the individual giving element of what we do at Blind Veterans and what we've done during this COVID pandemic. So as many of you already know, at Blind Veterans, we're dealing with a population that are mostly in the vulnerable category. And in fact, 95% of our beneficiaries are actually over 70. So we really needed to act fast in terms of our service delivery. And obviously, this actually gave us a unique opportunity within fundraising that we hadn't really had before. So the pandemic hits, we all leave the office, the situation is unprecedented, and we need a plan. And there's 5 things that we needed from that plan. 1, courage, to take a leap of faith when we have no data, no insights. Agility, the ability to change direction, to start some things, to stop some things, and to actually redesign others. We needed speed to be able to react quickly and to make decisions really quickly. Also, something that was really important was staff redeployment. This was to ensure that the resources were actually where they should be and where they were most needed. And 5th, it was stakeholder engagement. And that meant both internal and external. So internal, we actually got very close to our ops team. Those provide the frontline services, and we infiltrated that, made sure we understood what they were doing, how they were doing it, when they were doing it, and how it actually benefited our beneficiaries. We also got close to our suppliers so that they were actually part of the solution and allowed us to be fast and agile and do the things that we needed to do. So what does that actually mean practically? What did that look like? Well, we added a couple of new things. We did an emergency appeal. We'd never done an emergency appeal before. And in fact, it was really very basic because, again, we needed speed. It was a letter and an email to all of our supporters explaining how we were reacting to the pandemic, what we were doing to respond to our beneficiaries. And it was actually a very soft ask in the letter because we knew that we had a lot of things coming up. It was a soft ask. We had it signed by the Director of Operations. We got it out towards the back end of March. We generated over 45K. And in fact, we doubled the number of calls in 1 week that we would normally get on one of our most successful campaigns. So we nearly broke our poor supporter care team and actually drafted in extra help from around the charity to actually be able to manage that. We were quite overwhelmed actually by the response, and as you have alluded to, Helen, you know, the length of calls have also increased because people do want to talk, they want to hear about what you're doing. The other new thing that we did was we launched another DRTV advert. We chose not to redo the advert, and we chose to use the one we'd used previously. And in fact, we'd actually launched that in February, and we chose to run it again in April. So scramble, got it out in April, and through the 4 weeks during April that was out, we actually generated higher income than we had with the previous 2 times we'd gone out with that same DRTV advert. So increased the number of supporters as well. And also we obviously increased social media during this period of time too, to match in with it. So those are the new things. What about, you know, redesign, change, amending things that we currently have? Do you go ahead with your, you know, current appeals? We decided we would. So in acquisition, we actually adapted our cold campaigns, both the raffle and the cold cash appeal, with only days to actually be able to make those changes in order to keep the same schedules. And we made them Covid-19 related. And I'm delighted to say that the spring raffle has actually beaten its target in terms of income. The cold cash appeal has, we're close to target, and obviously it's still ongoing, and has led to several really large individual gifts of over £1,000. And we've already recruited 20% of our annual new supporter target during that period of time. Now, what's interesting is that we attended a webinar recently where it was said that you should really focus on your warm supporters. Don't focus on acquisition at this time. And thank goodness that we only heard that webinar after we had done ours. Otherwise, I would have maybe not had the courage to say, go ahead with this. So far, so good on that. So within retention, what did we do? Well, we amended, again, our warm campaigns, and we adapted what was going to be our VE Day commemoration campaign to being very Covid-19 related. We even used some of the phrases that we'd used in the emergency letter to link them together. And we managed to stick with our schedules on that, which was remarkable. And the raffle is close to target, and our cash appeal has already made target and beaten last year's, despite only launching on the 27th of April. So there's a lot of generosity out there. And I think there was a small amount of nervousness around launching the warm campaign immediately after the emergency campaign letter, but we needn't have worried. Regular giving, we actually had a telemarketing campaign running at the time of just before lockdown. So quick scramble, talked about what we were doing for Covid-19, got it over to Ethical, who are doing the telemarketing for us, so that their messaging was on point with what we were saying, which was great, because that we had a huge uplift compared to last year, and beat target again. So the one thing we haven't noticed so far, we haven't had an increase in cancelled direct debits over March, April and May compared to last year. So fingers crossed that will hold, but at the moment that is holding steady. So obviously, you know, new stuff, adapting stuff. What did we stop? Well, in individual giving, there's only one thing that we stopped, which I'm sure, you know, is the same for all of you, which is face-to-face supporter acquisition, in line with obviously all the guidance. And obviously there's other things within the charity we had to stop around events and community fundraising, but within individual giving, only face-to-face is the thing that has been impacted. And that wasn't a huge part of what we normally do. So we'd only just reintroduced it a year ago after having stopped it for a few years. So got a couple of minutes to talk about the future. And, you know, we've been lucky. People have been extremely generous, and the results so far look good. Matches what Helen was saying earlier about the uplift. And I think people are in an altruistic spirit at the moment. But we are in the early stages, and we all know that there is a downturn in the economy forecast, and people may not be feeling as generous in the coming months. So our early successes are, have the potential not to continue, and cost cutting will actually become a reality. We're quite lucky at Blind Veterans that we have been able to pivot and change our services so that we can still support our beneficiaries, and be able to provide online rehabilitation, and that's obviously extremely important for us. And that provides fundraising opportunities to show how our frontline staff are able to manage during this period of time. One of the things that I think I will certainly bring forward is that it's really important that we don't forget what we learned during this crisis, and keep being brave. In unprecedented times, sometimes you have to go with your gut. When you don't have that data, when you don't have those insights, when you've got nothing to draw upon, you have to go with your gut. Be agile. Don't be afraid to change. Don't be afraid to change midway. And be fast. Be fast with your decision making, because being able to be fast with your decision making actually allows you to move more quickly onto the next thing. So if it's going to fail, fail fast. If it's going to be successful, great, build upon it. And I think that leaves me bang on time.
Thank you so much, Gina. And what a reassuring story that is about the successes that you've had up until now. And certainly around the being agile, confident in the decisions that you're making. I think we can all take something from that. So thank you so very much. It's time now to do another poll. Let's see if I can make this work. Sorry, it's all new to me. All right, let's have a go. It's just one question this time. So the question is, where will you focus your attention as part of your ongoing fundraising strategy during lockdown? So this ties nicely into what Gina was saying about where things, what's already happened, but actually what's going to be happening in the future. So what are you looking to focus on as we move forward into the future? Just give that a couple of seconds. Lovely, we've got about 50% of the people voted so far. Let's give it another 5 seconds. Okay, if you want to get your votes in, now's the time to do it. Lovely, and we'll end the voting there. So what's interesting here is that direct mail is definitely the one where you're going to be focusing your attention, and that's interesting. It ties in nicely with what Gina was saying about getting even just a letter and an email out. Certainly saw a lot of great response from the emergency appeal that they conducted early on in the lockdown. So second up there is other digital, so outside of social media, and emergency appeals. Sorry, social media and other digital are the next up there in terms of popularity. So I think that's very interesting in terms of where people are focusing as we move forward through lockdown. And now it's time to hear from Jo. Jo Stone is Head of Public Fundraising at Battersea. She has over 20 years experience in the sector, having previously worked at British Red Cross, AIDS UK and Friends of the Earth, leading their individual giving programmes. She also has experience in the commercial sector, working for the White Company and DTV. Jo runs her own private coaching business, Stepping Stones Coaching, specialising in supporting senior fundraising managers in their careers. So we're really pleased to have Jo with us today. Over to you, Jo. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just check I'm not sharing my screen? Good, okay. Lovely. So I am Head of Public Fundraising at Battersea. So I'd say we're a medium-sized charity. Within public fundraising, what falls under me is the regular giving teams, legacy and in-memory fundraising, direct marketing, challenge events program, innovation and do your own thing fundraising products, supporter services, and the database team. So, I mean, there's going to be common themes throughout everything we're saying, and starting with Helen's report earlier. We know that COVID has impacted everyone and fundraising significantly. I think most charities are choosing to forecast down their income for 2020. And it's going to be especially raw for the ones who are mostly reliant on physical contacts, so driven by events or retail, etc. And community fundraising, so challenge events, community fundraising, special events, face-to-face, that's all having a massive impact across the sector, and some of that for Battersea as well. We were anticipating that, similar to everything that's been said before, that there would be maybe a drop in generosity in responses and maybe a spike in regular giving attrition. But there's lots of research out there, and exactly what's been said. We can see that people want to help. People react to crises with altruism, and that's coming through in our results as well. Donors are still really committed to the causes they care about, but I think that also some people are now leaning towards coronavirus related causes, so like NHS, charities, food banks, etc. We've found that donors also have an understanding that coronavirus has a really wider knock-on effect to other causes, such as delays in being able to help beneficiaries. And we're finding, we were worried that if you're a cause like Battersea with dogs and cats, that people won't see the relevancy, but obviously it's impacting how many animals we can rehome, how many animals we can take in. People who have lost income might no longer be able to keep a pet in their home, or people might have got ill or passed away and not able to, the pet needs a home. And then there's other things like vet services not happening. So it's kitten season. So if cats aren't being neutered, we're expecting to see a massive spike in our intake in cats and kittens as our doors are opening again. So also, we did think about that our traditional donor base is quite traditional, and many of those donors still have disposable income at present because they're not going on holiday, they're not traveling to work anymore, they're not eating out. And also, some of our donor groups are not in those socioeconomic groups that will be most affected by the downturn. We've been getting some incredible feedback through supporter services from our donors, and it's been really humbling to see how genuinely passionate our supporters are about the dogs and cats and about the work we do. And many people are calling us and increasing their donations or giving more, or just calling to thank us because they don't want animals to be forgotten, which is, most people who work at Battersea are animal lovers, so we get where they're coming from. Within public fundraising, the biggest impacts come on our large scale activities that we're unable to do at the moment. So largely, a huge impact is on not being able to do face-to-face. So we had quite a large face-to-face program and had ambitions to invest significantly more over the coming year, which has obviously all had to stop, and we're not sure. What we've done is we've planned in with our reforecasting a very slow return to market, maybe from Q4, and a continued knock-on effect through 2021, so not returning to the volumes that we were seeing before all this hit. We can see that some face-to-face activity has started in countries in Europe, but it's really early days to see how it's performing. But we're having some really engaging conversations with our agencies about how and when we think we might be able to start to slowly return. Obviously, all challenge events have been cancelled or postponed to Q3, Q4. So a big impact on us, other than third-party events, which is out of our control, is that we have a Muddy Dog Challenge. It's an obstacle course. We run it all over the country. And at the moment, we've postponed those events to the end of the year, but there's still a question mark over whether the lockdown rules will allow that to happen. So we have to keep reviewing that, which also makes it hard for how to communicate effectively with your supporters. We've also assumed for our reforecast and possibly when we move into planning for 2021, a drop in gift value and an increase in attrition, to just assume that there will be a financial impact on our supporters and we'll just keep monitoring that over time as we reforecast throughout the year to see whether that's come true or not. So we've also had a big scramble, like everybody else, to see what mitigating activities we can put in place to try and help fill the gap that special events, corporate fundraising and face-to-face fundraising having to stop has created. A big area is that we've increased a lot of our DRTV activity. So that's to take tactical advantage of the very low media costs at the moment and much bigger audience sizes. So we've increased our investment in our regular giving text to donate and also our lottery DRTV advert, which also, it's a one-off, but it offers us an opportunity to reach new audiences who would normally be at work during the day. So far, these are performing well, and our CPAs are quite healthy, more so with our regular giving PSMS advert, which is interesting because historically we've really struggled to make that perform on TV, but that is outperforming our lottery at the moment. We're not sure why. It could be because People Postcode Lottery has really upped their DRTV advertising and made it very COVID related and showing the support they're giving to charities who are helping people throughout this. And we've speedily tried to turn around creating a brand new advert for Value Exchange. So for those of you who might not know, Value Exchange is where we offer a free item and in exchange you give us your contact details. So for example, we already do this online. We've been testing it in 2019, where on Facebook we'll offer a free tote bag and you give us your phone number so that we can arrange delivery, and if you've opted into that, we can chat to you about supporting our work with a regular donation. So we've been running test campaigns throughout 2019 and it's a really strong performing campaign for us. So we thought we should take advantage of the low media costs at the moment for DRTV and bring the plan for an advert forward. So that's what we're doing. At the same time, marketing and brand, who sit in a different directorate, they've taken advantage of the same low media costs and have very quickly turned around a lovely new brand campaign in response to the lockdown. So focusing on how rescues are rescuing us during lockdown with lots of homemade videos from our supporters around how their animals have helped boost them and support them through lockdown. We've massively increased our digital activity. So again, similar to TV, it's to take advantage of more people being online and wider audiences and lower costs at the moment. And we're also developing virtual fundraising activities. So we're trying to look at a big mass participation type event, perhaps, to offer to our Muddy Dog Challenge participants. But also in our Do Your Own Thing fundraising, we've tried to turn it into digital and lockdown friendly ways to do things with your pet and your families at home. There was also the 2.6 challenge, which most people here will know about. So that was launched by London Marathon, and we weren't sure how it would perform. It raised around £6,000 for us. We're massively trying to maximise our opportunities around Value Exchange online. So as well as doing that DRTV advert, we've really increased our investment in digital because it works extremely well for us. Marketing and fundraising we already have done a lot of work on how we collaborate better and work more effectively. But in response to this, we've really come together to cohesively bring together everything both directorates are doing in response to COVID, and to make sure that they complement each other, that they all fit through the key themes of our brand. So promoting different themes. It could be joy, it could be our expertise, it could be our voice for helping more animals, to influencing government and stuff, or endeavouring to help more animals. So for us, it would be through raising money. And at the same time, we've looked at where they're pushing the brand, how can our Value Exchange, perhaps the item that we're offering, complement the same messaging. We stopped all our telephone fundraising activities, so we've ceased upgrade and reactivation and conversion campaigns for the moment, but we kept the capacity with the agencies and have been calling all of our donors with a stewardship phone call to update them on how we are supporting our animals during lockdown, how Battersea's trying to keep things going, and also just check in on them. they've been received incredibly well. So people are taking the call, they're really enjoying being able to talk, and they are quite long calls. And we do a survey afterwards, and the responses are all positive, and really people really value and appreciate and are surprised that they haven't been asked to give money. And some people are volunteering to donate or increase their gift on the call, but we're not asking for that. Our direct marketing program, similar to other people, we chose not to stop it, and that has continued to perform well. It's hitting and sometimes exceeding budgeted response rates. Our campaigns, so we've had like a spring cash appeal or raffle, they are aligned with or better than 2019 results. So again, it's really reassuring that there's a consistent thing here, that type of audience is continuing to give, and to give generously. We've increased our legacy marketing. So we're looking maybe to do a radio ad. We've increased our cold legacy advertising. We've had to tailor the message very carefully, but we're trying to look out for our longer term income, because that's where we're seeing the biggest impact coming through. We are also increasing, for similar reasons, our cold direct marketing acquisition. So that's because a lot of our legators eventually have come from cold cash acquisition programs. So whilst again media costs are lower than usual, we've decided to increase our activity there. And all of our content, where possible, has been amended to reflect the current situation, so that it feels relevant if you're reading or receiving something from us. So in 2020 and even in 2021, the biggest impact is actually from the face-to-face. And it actually makes our budget look more healthy. As you know, it doesn't make a return in the first couple of years. So we're having huge cost savings. So our net income actually looks better for 2020. And that's because of that high upfront cost. But obviously, as you're getting people to give a regular gift, it's how that pans out in the long term. A majority of public fundraising income is made up of our regular giving. So from our core database that we've already got supporting us, we get around 16.5 million pounds a year from those people. And that's pretty secure. We've seen small spikes in attrition, but similar to what's been reported, it hopefully looks to be tailing off, and could be just related to a big increase in acquisition in December. So it's the early attritus. In the longer term, the impact is on our net income over the next 5 years. The Battersea is year 2 into its new organisational strategy, and we needed to significantly increase our net income to be able to fundraise for the ambitions of that strategy by the end of that period. And at the moment, as a result of what's happening, our net income is looking to be about 25% worse off come 2024. So we're significantly going to be down by a few million pounds on net income. If we did no mitigating activity like value exchange and DRTV, etc., that would have increased to about 40% worse off. So it is a huge challenge for us. It's a huge challenge. It's the longer term picture that's concerning, but it's also been a beautiful and great opportunity to communicate with and connect with our supporters. And that's me done.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jo. It's really interesting to hear all the different activities that you're involved in, how your supporters are reacting, whether that's directly to you or through those stewardship calls, and how the two directorates are working together to really push the same themes and really get the most impact from the communications that you're doing. Thank you. I think Ella, I think we'll come to you next, if that's all right. Ella Pierce is Director of Fundraising and Marketing at Sightsavers. She's leading the organisation's fundraising strategy across the UK, Italy, Sweden and Norway. She originally joined Sightsavers in 2013 to manage the digital fundraising, coming from a broad fundraising background, working on everything from corporate fundraising and direct mail to innovation. So we're really pleased to have Ella with us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. So I wanted today to sort of share a bit of my story and what I've learned through this crisis. So I've been at Sightsavers for about 7 years, but I'm new to the role of Director of Fundraising and Marketing. And in fact, I took it on the week that we went into lockdown. So it's been an incredibly steep learning curve for me. And I've learned a lot of things that I think are hugely beneficial in the crisis, but I certainly intend to try and take forward as well. So I'm going to share a few of those now. The first one is something that I think we've heard from Joe and Gina as well, which is hold your nerve. For me, week 1 in the role, UK goes into lockdown. We had our second biggest mailing of the year due to go out. And it was really tempting to pull it and to think this isn't a good idea, we shouldn't do this. But instead, we held our nerve, we decided to adapt. So we did pause it. We took out about a week to be able to include a kind of a covering note from the chief exec, recognising the situation. But other than that, the mailing went ahead as planned. And it was a nerve-wracking initial few weeks because the postal system was in slight disarray at that point and results definitely weren't coming in as we expected. But actually over time, it has caught up and it's done really well. It's hit its target. And that's incredible. And it would have been so easy for us to pull that. And the fact that we didn't it will have made a big difference to our income for the year. The next thing I would say is talk to, in my case, our board, our directors, our trustees, whoever are sort of the people, the decision makers in your organisation, having an open dialogue with them. I mean, I speak to our chief exec, who's my line manager, 3 times a week, very open about what's happening, both the good things and the bad things, and recognising how quickly they're changing. That's meant that all of those decision makers, the senior management team, are on board. They trust that we're doing everything we can to make the best decisions. And also, when I do come and say, actually, we think there's an opportunity to do something here, they're very, very supportive of that. And on the flip side, when I have to go and say, actually, this bit's not working very well, it gets a better response because I'm just being open all the time. I would say it's very hard to keep up. Things are changing daily, if not hourly. That's been a massive lesson for me, how important it is to give that part of the role the time it needs, the time to speak to the people on our programmatics teams, speak to all of the fundraising team, and just try and understand what's happening. But also give yourself a break. You won't be able to keep on top of everything all the time. So, if things are changing hourly, do your best, but you won't be able to keep up with everything. Our supporters have definitely appreciated our honesty through this period. We don't know all the answers yet, so Sightsavers works in developing countries around the world. Africa is a really interesting situation for us at the moment because the pandemic really hasn't spread as quickly as we've seen in Europe. We are still in a bit of a waiting game to see what impact it's going to have there in the longer term. So we're just taking the approach of being really honest about that, being really transparent with our supporters, and they're responding really well. We're saying things like, at the time I write this is the situation, but we don't know what might happen yet. And people do understand that. I think people are living that themselves in their daily life of not really knowing quite what's going to happen next. So they respond well when you reflect that to them. As has been mentioned by the others, some channels are doing better than others. Now, at Sightsavers, we are, in this particular situation, find ourselves relatively lucky that we don't do face-to-face. We don't have a huge amount of income coming through from events and community fundraising. So most of our biggest channels are the ones that have been relatively well protected. So for us, DRTV is proving to be really, really strong. Media costs are down, audience numbers are up, so we're seeing really positive results. And interestingly, that's something that's happening across all of the countries where we fundraise. So it's not just something that's happening in the UK. We are expecting, though, that will change towards the end of the year. As we come out of lockdown in all of the countries and the advertisers who've not been advertising on TV want to go back in and make up for lost time, we are predicting that it might get to be a really, really tough market. Similarly, digital going great. But for us, we are yet to work out how much of the increase we're seeing in digital income is because people are choosing to donate online instead of through another method. Also, we are spending more on DRTV. We know that has quite a big impact on digital. I think there's a bit of everything in there. Digital activity itself is doing well. DRTV will be making a difference. But I do think there's also some people who are receiving a mailing and thinking, I'm not going to go out and send a check in the post. I'm going to try donating online using my card this time. Also for us, being ready to flex has been a really, really important thing. I mean, normally our mailing schedule is absolutely sacrosanct. You know, the mailings are planned a year in advance. We know when they're going out, and it's very, very important we stick to those dates. But we can't. We've not been able to. You know, the example of our mailing that was due to go out the first week of lockdown, we couldn't just go ahead and stick to the mailing date. We had to wait. We had to take the time we needed to put that covering note in. And I think that's where the good relationships that we have with our third-party agencies and suppliers like WoodsValldata, who do our fulfillment, but also our print managers, our call center, those relationships have really, really helped us, because you know, we've had to ask a lot of them to be flexible as well with us, and the fact that everybody's been willing and able to try and help has been incredible. We've also had to do things like reconfigure all of our digital activity to fit in around what else is going on. Arguably, digital's able to be very agile like that, but it still takes quite a lot of work for the team and quite a lot of thinking to make sure that everything still fits together as it had been planned to do. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I think, you know, I have saved the most important for last, is that a good team is genuinely worth their weight in gold. So I stepped into this role. I was lucky enough that I've been part of the team for a number of years, so I knew everybody very well already. But, you know, a crisis shows that the best laid plans can fall apart in an instant through no fault of anybody. And I have had to massively rely on the team, who are all brilliant, have all worked tirelessly, flexibly, really gone above and beyond in a lot of cases. And I think that's, you know, we've tried to give that back to them. We're being very flexible with our staff as well, and recognising the challenges everybody's in. But that goes beyond actually just the team that we employ. And again, to those third parties, it's one big wider team. And the fact that everybody gets on and is honest and transparent and willing to work together is what's meant that our activity has continued to work as well as it possibly could. So that's definitely something that I will be taking forward and trying to make sure that even in the good times, we remember to recognise the hard work and the value that everybody's bringing to this. It's, you know, when the chips are down and you're all in a crisis, we're perhaps a little bit more forthcoming in our appreciation when we see people doing good things. But it's really, really important, I think, that we carry that on beyond when this all finishes. So those are some of the things that I've learned in this very, very interesting time. So that's it from me, Helen.
Thank you so much, Ella. Some great insight there, and gosh, fancy taking on the role at the start of the lockdown. That's some achievement, and the bravery of the organisation, and talking about the honesty and transparency of your communications. You know, that's really interesting in terms of the approach and maybe a slight adaptation to the way that the tone of the pieces that you're sending out will have had a great effect on that. It's also really interesting to hear about the wider European market sector and what's happening out there, because obviously you're seeing broader than just in the UK. So thank you so much. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left for questions now. There will be another poll at the end, which is just a feedback poll for all the attendees, if you wouldn't mind just sticking around and filling out that for us, just so that if we run another one of these webinars in the future, we know what we can do to improve. I think Helen Dorr has unfortunately had some technical difficulties and has dropped out of the panelist section. So if you've got any questions for Helen, pop them in the Q&A and we'll get them over to her separately and get answers out to everybody as quickly as possible. But the first question I've got here is for Gina. This is from Deanna at Great Ormond Street Hospital Charity. So Gina, it's interesting to see that you did not have a spike in attrition in April to February with your regular givers. Do you have any theories or reasons why that might be?
Well, first of all, we don't have a great number of regular givers as a percentage of our donors. And I think having a smaller percentage probably means that you've got a smaller section. We have a much older supporter base than a lot of other charities, and I think they are perhaps slower in terms of changing if they already have a direct debit. What was interesting is that we did have the uplift campaign, and we did think that we would have a lot of people saying, I'll continue my direct debit, but I don't want to do an uplift. And in fact, that wasn't the case. The majority of people did increase their direct debit, which was quite surprising. So I think there's an element that we have a much older supporter base. I think that's one theory. The other is that people have been slower, that we may see that later on. I also expected to see quite a few direct debits being cancelled from our previous face-to-face activities, which didn't happen, which was a surprise, but we are still early stages. So I don't want to count my chickens too early.
Thank you. So Joe, a question for you. What would you say is the single biggest concern for your charity right now as we move forward in COVID-19?
It's what I touched on, that the single biggest concern for us is our 5-year, 10-year projections due to the impact of face-to-face. So our biggest concern is how will the face-to-face supply market bounce back from this? We've had a lot of discussions around how we can support our suppliers to make it through this, because it's obviously really difficult, and it's difficult depending on the way they pay their fundraisers and whether they could furlough them or not, etc. That is our biggest concern, is face-to-face fundraising market over the next 2 to 3 year period, because a lot of our plans hinged on massively upweighting our investment in that area, because we didn't foresee this coming and it was going really well, and we knew that it was a risk to be so reliant on that one area, but make hay while the sun shines. So we were going for it. And there isn't something that scalable with that return that we can easily replace those volumes with. So that's our biggest concern.
Thank you very much. So, and a question for you. What new approaches are you looking to test in the coming months, if any? Are you looking to try anything different?
Well, we haven't done an emergency style appeal yet through this period, partly because, as I've mentioned, the impact on our programmatic work just isn't that clear yet, and we feel like that will be the opportunity to go out with an emergency appeal. So we are looking at that. I think there's lots of questions around the timing of when that will be right. And we are looking at upscaling our digital activity as well, trying sort of bits and pieces of new things there. But we are really taking a bit of a test and learn approach to those bits, sort of trying small and then being ready to quickly upscale where we find things work. But really for us, it is a question of putting more into the channels that are working. So DRTV, which is working well for us, focusing on the direct mail, and just putting in everything we can to those.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for attending the webinar today, and to Joe Stone, Gina Almond, Ella Pierce and Helen Dorr for being our panelists today. We do have more questions that have come through from the attendees that unfortunately we don't have time to cover right now, but what we will do, all the panelists have agreed that they'll just take a few minutes to look through those questions and send some answers through. So we'll get those out to you via email. Thank you all to everyone. I'm going to start the poll now for the feedback there. So if people could just take a couple of minutes to let us know how useful the webinar was, whether you'd like to attend similar events like this in the future, and whether or not you're a current WoodsValldata client, and whether you'd be interested in finding out more from WoodsValldata as well. So thank you so much for attending, filling out the poll, and being part of this. There will be a recording So we've been recording this session, and this should be available to download, but again, we'll let you know where and when that will be available. So thank you, everybody. Just gonna. Thank you everyone for voting, and hopefully we'll see you again next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.